A degree used to do two things at once. It proved you had knowledge, and it proved you were employable. For a long time, that was enough. A diploma signaled discipline, intelligence, and readiness for the workforce. But that signal is weakening. Not because education stopped mattering, because the labor market changed faster than the education system did. And over the next 10 years, that gap may widen so much that many degrees will no longer function the way people expect. They may still exist, they may still cost money, they may still carry status, but for a growing number of careers, they will stop being the thing that opens the door. When people hear this argument, they often assume it means learning won't matter, or universities are useless. That is not the point. Knowledge still matters, skill still matters, specialization still matters. What is changing is the role of the degree itself. A degree is not just education, it is also a credential, and credentials only keep their power if employers believe they reliably signal value. That is where the shift is happening. The issue is not whether people should learn. The issue is whether a traditional degree remains the best way to prove capability in a labor market that is becoming faster, more digital, and more skills verifiable. The degree system was built for a world where change moved more slowly. Industries evolved over decades. Professional roles were more stable. Employers had fewer ways to evaluate applicants directly, so degrees became a sorting mechanism. A company couldn't test thousands of candidates deeply. It needed a shortcut. A degree from a recognized institution became that shortcut. It reduced uncertainty. But that model depends on one assumption, that the skills taught through formal education remain aligned with the jobs waiting on the other side. That assumption is becoming weaker, because many modern jobs now evolve faster than degree programs do. Work is becoming less standardized. Some careers still depend heavily on formal qualifications: medicine, law, engineering, licensed fields, high-compliance professions. Those degrees will remain important, but many other roles are changing. Marketing, design, software, product, media, analytics, operations, and even parts of finance are increasingly judged by demonstrated ability rather than academic pathway. Can you do the work? Can you solve the problem? Can you show evidence? That matters more when hiring moves faster, teams stay leaner, and employers want output immediately. A degree once said, "This person is probably trainable." Increasingly, companies want, "This person can already contribute." That shift is subtle but profound. Artificial intelligence accelerates this change, because AI does not just automate tasks, it changes how tasks are learned, demonstrated, and evaluated. Many early career jobs used to function as training stages. You learn by doing small pieces of work, research, drafting, analysis, editing, support tasks. But AI now performs many of those smaller pieces instantly. That means the labor market becomes less interested in potential and more interested in judgment. In other words, the value shifts upward. And when the lower training layers shrink, credentials alone lose power. Why? Because a degree proves that someone completed a program. It does not automatically prove they can operate in a workflow where routine output is automated and only higher-order decisions remain valuable. That makes portfolios, case studies, simulations, and practical proof more important. There is another problem too. Too many degrees now signal too little. As more people earn degrees, the credential becomes less distinctive. This is credential inflation. A bachelor's degree that once separated candidates can become the new minimum. Then employers start looking for master's degrees, internships, project work, brand name institutions, or direct experience. So the degree remains required but no longer sufficient. And once a credential becomes common, its sorting power weakens. That doesn't mean the degree has no value. It means its relative value falls. This is exactly what happens when any signal becomes crowded. The market demands a stronger signal. One reason degrees may matter less is that proof is becoming easier to capture outside institutions. A designer can show a portfolio. A developer can show code. A writer can show work. An analyst can show projects. A marketer can show campaigns. A product candidate can show case studies. A creator can show audience traction. In the past, it was harder to display capability at scale. Today, the internet stores evidence. That changes the role of the university. If employers can evaluate the output directly, they become less dependent on the credential as a proxy. That is a major structural shift. Because degrees were strongest when proof was hard to access, as proof becomes easier to share, degrees become one signal among many, not the signal. This is the deeper trend. Education and hiring are slowly separating. For a long time, they were tightly linked. You studied something, then the degree validated you, then the labor market absorbed you. That chain is weakening. People are learning from online programs, work communities, boot camps, open source work, independent study, creator ecosystems, on-the-job skill building, and direct experimentation. That does not replace universities entirely, but it does decentralize capability. And once capability becomes decentralized, degrees lose monopoly power. The institution no longer controls access to knowledge. It only controls one form of certification. That matters, because in many industries, certification is becoming less valuable than visible competence. This does not mean all degrees become useless. That would be a lazy conclusion. Certain professions will continue to require formal education because the barrier is not only skill. It is liability, regulation, trust, and standardization. You want doctors trained formally. You want structural engineers licensed. You want legal professionals accredited. Those degrees remain powerful because the system depends on formal trust. But outside those fields, the value of the degree becomes more conditional. Not, do you have one? But, what does it prove? What can you do with it? How current is the skill set? How well does it map to real demand? That is a very different standard, and a harsher one. Universities face a structural problem. They are expensive. They are slow to adapt, and many are still designed around older assumptions about labor markets. Curricula take time to change. Institutions move slowly. Prestige systems preserve themselves. But the economy increasingly rewards responsiveness. That mismatch creates frustration. Students borrow money to buy a credential, expecting access to a stable path. Then they enter a labor market where entry roles are shrinking, proof matters more than pedigree, and the degree alone no longer creates security. This does not make universities irrelevant, but it does mean the old promise becomes harder to sustain. And when an institution keeps charging premium prices for a weakening signal, the market eventually notices. If degrees weaken, what replaces them? Not one thing. A stack of signals, portfolio, experience, reputation, proof of execution, network, apprenticeship, community trust, practical demonstration. The hiring system becomes more fragmented. In some ways, that is more meritocratic. In other ways, it is more demanding, because instead of one accepted credential, people now need to build evidence across multiple dimensions. This raises the burden on individuals, especially younger workers. The degree once condensed effort into a recognized package. The new system may require continuous self-proof. That is not necessarily easier, just different. If degrees lose value faster than institutions adapt, the consequences go beyond education. It affects student debt, social mobility, hiring systems, labor market trust, and how young people make long-term decisions. A generation may pay for credentials that no longer function as they once did. That creates disillusionment, not only with education but with institutions generally. And that distrust matters, because modern economies rely on belief. Belief that effort leads somewhere, belief that investment in yourself pays off, belief that systems still reward competence. If those beliefs weaken, economic behavior changes. People delay, people disengage, people avoid risk, people question the path itself. The real issue is not that degrees are disappearing. It is that the degree is losing its monopoly as a gateway. That changes everything. Because once the monopoly breaks, universities stop being the automatic bridge between youth and work. They become one pathway among several. For some fields, that changes little. For others, it changes the entire value proposition. And once employers trust direct proof more than formal certification, the role of higher education has to be reconsidered. Not emotionally, structurally. Most degrees won't become worthless because knowledge stopped mattering. They may become less powerful because proof changed. The labor market is moving toward direct evidence, faster adaptation, and narrower definitions of useful skill. That does not end education, but it does challenge the old model: study first, prove later, enter safely. In the next 10 years, the question may no longer be, do you have a degree? It may be, what can you actually do? And for many institutions, that shift will be harder to survive than people expect.